Today, I am joined by Libby Emmons from the Millennial to go through some of the biggest stories in the country. Libby, thank you for coming on again.
Sure thing, Stephen.
So, a lot has happened since we had you on. I believe you were on the day that President Trump was sworn in as president.
Mhm.
And since then, my goodness, the Trump administration is moving quickly to make America great again. One story that I wanted to go over with you that I cannot find any teeth to this story, but Democrat Representative Jamie Raskins, who just absolutely hates Trump, led the two impeachments against him. He's now saying publicly that thanks to his efforts and others, that Democrats boldly stood between Elon Musk and Trump and seniors' Social Security money and their plans to destroy Social Security. Raskins goes on to say that this is a huge victory today. So literally, he did nothing to save Social Security. Elon Musk and Trump didn't do anything to hurt Social Security except remove illegals and people over the age of 115 that were collecting collectively $20 billion a month in Social Security. And they learned that 40% of all phone calls to Social Security are fraudulent. What is Jamie Raskin talking about? Is he inventing victories because Democrats literally have nothing to run on?
Yeah, I think so. And I think part of it too is that every time you hear somebody start screaming about Social Security, it's a scare tactic. They really want Americans to think that whoever it is that, in this case, Jamie Raskin is railing against is trying to dismantle Social Security. And that's not something we've heard from President Trump. That's certainly not something we've heard from the Doge team that is trying to root out crimes in this case. You mentioned the 40% of phone calls that they said come into the Social Security offices every day to try and divert funds from American seniors to, random whatever other accounts. This is a kind of theft where you steal somebody's money by just having it completely diverted. We've seen a lot of that coming out of Doge, different things where, there's waste, there's fraud, and it just has never been addressed. And you also, what Jamie Raskin is forgetting is that the MAGA movement is different from previous Republican movements, right? The MAGA movement is in favor of social safety net programs to make sure that Americans are not left out in the cold when, in the case of Social Security, they are old and they need to have money to support themselves in their old age. MAGA is not against Medicaid or Medicare. That's just not something that we have seen. So it does seem to be a scare tactic. The other thing, too, that I think Jamie Raskin forgets, and I think Chuck Schumer and the others, Democrats who are railing against these, this mythical attack on Social Security forget, is that, for people my age, I'm in my 40s, for everybody younger than me, and for a good deal of people older than me, we've been hearing for our entire lives not to rely on Social Security. We have heard that the Social Security trust fund is going to run dry, that it's not something we can even consider as part of our old age plans. Remember, we had George W. Bush was trying to make it so that Americans could invest that money because Social Security was in trouble. And that was what, like 2000, 2002? So Americans who are on Social Security now are the boomer generation essentially, and they're the ones who are particularly terrified about this, and they're the ones who are out there protesting. But for the rest of us, I don't. Has Social Security ever really played into your understanding of how you're going to be an old person? It hasn't for me. Not only do I think that Doge and Trump are not attacking Social Security, I don't think Americans who are under the age of 65 right now are even imagining that there would be any left.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, I've wondered. Okay, just going back to the people 115 and older, it's about
Right.
20 billion dollars a month in checks. Somebody was cashing those checks, maybe Democrat voters, and that's why they don't want those checks to dry up because then they won't vote for them. But I'm just looking at this, going, okay, you times that by 12, that's nearly $250 billion a year in fake payments. And Democrats say Trump is going to ruin Social Security. and yet a program that is heading towards liquidation, bankruptcy, that they were draining it faster. So are they mad that he's draining it, or are they mad that they're not the ones getting credit for stopping the fraud? I can't figure out their thinking.
It is sort of amazing, right? And there's a reason you can't figure out their thinking. It's because they don't have any coherent thinking process going on. You now have a Democratic Party who, for the past 8 years, has been telling us that it's time to burn down the system, that the whole system is racist, that everyone is transphobic, that everyone in power is terrible. And now they're saying, wait a second, don't dismantle the status quo, buck it up, right? You had Ilhan Omar out there, what was it, last weekend during the whole hands off protest. She was out there saying, this is not normal. None of this is normal. Well, I'm sorry, Congressman Omar, for years now, you have been saying that what's normal is bad, that we have to shake everything up, that we have to do everything completely differently from what has been going on. And now they're trying to uphold some kind of status quo. So they don't have a coherent policy process. They don't have a coherent understanding of what it is that they want. And if you watched some of the videos from the hands off protest last weekend, I think Turning Point USA's Frontlines was out there. They were saying, what are you protesting? We're protesting everything. Hands off what? Hands off our research. Hands off, Social Security, even though that's basically made up at this point. There's no policy platform and there's no leadership talent in the party. And that's really a shame for the Democrats, because it means they're just going to keep losing until they can come up with something to stand for. But it's also really a shame for the American people who deserve an opposition party, right? I mean, ideally, in our political system, with our two-party system, you have one party saying, what about this idea? And you have another party saying, well, actually, what about this idea? These people are supposed to be working together. These are our representatives. They're there to do what we want, to do what their constituents want. And I don't think any constituent in the United States is sitting there going, what I really want you to do is gum up the works and make sure nothing happens and nothing gets done that's worthwhile for anybody. Nobody wants that. So that's really a shame that that's what they think their job is now, is to resist the president, resist the other party, as opposed to working together to, fulfill what it is that their constituents want done.
Yeah, I agree with you. I feel like the two parties are so angry at each other that they're just not getting anything done for the American people, and
Mhm.
that is really sad to me. But yeah, I was reading that this morning, going, what is Jamie Raskins talking about? He, like, literally, you did not just save Social Security. Like, you need a talking point so desperately that you would just invent one. Okay, now my whole life, I've heard the Democrat Party was the party of kindness and inclusion. My whole life, I've heard that the Democrat Party was the party against war and against violence. But now a new study out shows that 55.2% of Democrats that were polled believe it would be justified if Donald Trump was killed. 48.6% say it would be justified if Elon Musk was killed. And 57.6% said it's okay that we're destroying Tesla dealerships because we're getting our voice heard. So freedom of speech. Your thoughts on, like, are there really that many people out there that feel it's okay if the president and the CEO of a major American company that employs hundreds of thousands of people, is in every school portfolio for retirement, government retirement, that it's okay to have violence or death on these people?
Well, Democrats were the ones, after there was an assassination attempt on Trump's life last July, who came out on social media saying that they wished that Thomas Crooks, they wished that he had not missed. So this has been building for a while. These are also the same people who go out there and say, it's okay to punch a Nazi, and then redefine Nazi as anyone who disagrees with them on anything at all, then come out and say it's okay to punch women who don't think that men are women, that's okay too. These women apparently are equivalent to, genocidal Nazis. These are people who say that Elon Musk is a Nazi for wanting to get rid of waste and fraud in government. And of course, this is a man who just rescued astronauts that the previous administration left stranded for 9 months aboard the International Space Station. They don't seem to have any idea what it is that they're really advocating for. And yeah, this is a group of people at large who, when they get very frustrated, just start lashing out physically. We saw this in New York. There was I forget what the young woman's name is, but there was a pro-life activist interviewing people on the streets of Harlem. And when she was talking to a woman who was pro-choice, eventually the woman who was pro-choice just grabbed her and pushed her down, and she ended up all bloody. So I think that there is a feeling among a large swath of leftists and people who are Democrats that if somebody if somebody disagrees with you enough, that is worthy of a violent reaction. These are the same people that say words are violence, right? So they feel justified if you say something that they disagree with, they feel justified in hurting you or becoming violent because of just something that you said.
Yeah. So strange, that words are violence, but violence isn't violence, right? Like remember the summer of love, burning down buildings, burning people's businesses that had literally nothing to do with the racial tension or the civil rights tension. It was literally just, we know we'll get away with it. In fact, some of them won lawsuits against the police after they did vandalism and damage and arson. It's like
31 people were killed that summer. 31 people lost their lives.
Oh my gosh.
Because of that violence. Yeah.
Men, have you noticed you don't feel the same as you did 10 or 20 years ago? Feeling sluggish, brain fog slowing you down? Ignite Ultra from Redline Remedies has been a game changer. Imagine crushing your to-do list at home and at work, powering through workouts and still having juice for what matters most. Today's food, drinks, and the overuse of plastic is turning men into estrogen factories. Extra weight on their belly, low energy, low libido. It's actually making men age faster than they should. Most men wouldn't settle for a weak power drill, so why settle for low energy? And ladies, most men won't see a doctor about this, but this can help unlock their testosterone while blocking estrogen. Plus, it helps with inflammation in the prostate and health of the bladder, all things men need as they age. Redline Remedies is a USA no-filler company that uses the scientifically backed dose you need. Ignite Ultra helps block extra estrogen in the body, frees up your testosterone, calms your nervous system, fuels male hormones, and strengthens your endocrine system while boosting libido. Men, your hormones are under attack. Ignite Ultra is how you fight back. I want you to visit Redline Remedies or snap the QR code. Make sure you use code Gardner to get an additional 20% off today. Men feel better when their bodies are firing on all cylinders, so give your body what it needs today.
It's like living in an upside down world where up is down and down is up. But yeah, when I saw that, I was like, really? Like over half of Democrats like are secretly, if it's anonymous, willing to say, yeah, I'm okay if Trump gets killed. Like that's how evil he is. That's how brainwashed they are.
Yeah, and they think that violence is the answer to that. And also, when you look at previous assassinations and assassination attempts on U.S. presidents, you do see a lot of leftists who engaged in that kind of violence because they feel that it's justified. They think that their worldview is so essential that anything spoken against it is some kind of blasphemy or some kind of, apostasy, and they're willing to get violent because of that.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Over here on YouTube, not on Rumble, where you have freedom of speech, but on YouTube, after the 2020 election, I couldn't even talk about whether there was shenanigans or inconsistencies or outliers, anything like that. They shut that down really, really hard. No judges were willing to look at the information that the Trump legal team was bringing. They were just throwing it out. But now President Trump has hinted multiple times that they will be showing how the FBI interfered in the election, how there were shenanigans with the votes, specifically in the swing states. Now, Trump has signed an executive order where he has removed the security clearance for Christopher Krebs. This was the head of cybersecurity for the entire United States of America. He's over the CISA program. Trump is saying that this dude is a fraud and that they are going to expose the fraud. Do you think in the coming months we're going to see an actual investigation into whether the 2020 election was free and fair?
I'm not sure. I know that this is something that a lot of people who support Trump have not been able to get over, the 2020 election and, the various inconsistencies that were happening during that time. And it's certainly something that Trump is adamant about, in his belief that it was messed with and that it was tampered with. And there is some evidence of tampering, although, a lot of it is coming from social media companies and the influence of the Biden campaign and this deep state on social media companies. Like if you look at the FBI's relationship to the Hunter Biden laptop story, which after the Hunter Biden laptop story broke and it was suppressed on social media and Joe Biden walked away with the election. After that, there was polling where Americans said that if they had known about that story, they would not have voted for Joe Biden. But they didn't have a chance to know about it because it was so suppressed, not just on social media, but by legacy media outlets. And the FBI was in possession of that laptop going back to 2019, and they didn't do anything about it. And it turned out that the FBI had given social media executives reason to believe that if they came into contact with stories about a purported Hunter Biden laptop, that there was reason to believe that that was Russian disinformation. And there's also just recently, I think it was in this past week, it turned out that someone from the FBI had contacted a social media company, I think it was Twitter, to say that the Hunter Biden laptop story was not fake. And they were reprimanded and told not to say anything about that by their superiors. So we do know that the FBI was involved, certainly in that way. We know that eventual Secretary of State Antony Blinken was involved in procuring a letter from 51 intelligence people in the intelligence community to say that the laptop was Russian disinformation. So all of that, I think, is election interference, and it was designed to prevent Donald Trump from winning the election. I remember covering the lawsuits that were brought by Trump's campaign at the time in, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Arizona. There was some stuff going on in Wisconsin. And there was a lot going on there, and it was hard to ever really get an understanding of exactly what was being alleged or how the defense was handling that. It would be interesting to see, but I think for the most part, Americans are ready to move forward to get the business of government done. There's not a lot of time. Here we have till midterms really start up in earnest. The Democrats may get a foot under them at some point and really start going for it. And there is such a huge project that President Trump has undertaken to revitalize the American economy, American morale, American standing in the world, the American military. There's so much that he has undertaken that I would hate to see anybody in his administration whose hands could be put to the task at hand looking backwards for any reason.
Yeah, that's a great point. Plus, we would hate for them to come back and say, "Oh, actually, he did win, and it wasn't eligible for 2024." Right? And then the Democrats, they would bury Joe Biden and try to remove Trump because they will literally do anything if it hurts Donald Trump. I mean, there you go. 56% of them want the guy dead.
Yeah,
you think they wouldn't try to remove him?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, wanted to get your thoughts on this. We've got this big tariff battle going on. I read late last night that Donald Trump has brought in more new investment money in 60 days than Biden and Harris brought in 48 months. So 4 years. So he outdid them in 60 days compared to what they did in 48 months. That's insane. Like, does that not scream that other countries, the banks, businesses, they're saying, wait a minute, we're being set up for a super pro-business, profitable, new jobs here in America, booming economy. I don't know. I think a lot of businesses are very optimistic about America right now.
I certainly hope so. And we've seen a lot of that investment. And Trump made some promises on the campaign trail that he would bring jobs back to the US, that he would bring manufacturing home, that he would deal with some of these communities across the country that have been decimated by the withdrawal of industry and make those places great again and give those people jobs again and let people, work for a living and support their families, which is, I think, what we all want the freedom to be able to do. So yeah, there's been a lot of investment, and I think that the initial threat of tariffs made a great difference for companies saying like, okay, we'll come on in, we'll invest in the United States. And then the other thing that Trump did, and this is something that Harris would never have done, and certainly something that Biden did the opposite of, is pull back on some of the regulations. So that one of the first companies that came in, what was it, SoftBank, I think, something like that, promised like this whole $1 billion investment. Pardon me if I'm getting my numbers wrong. I haven't looked at that in a little while, but Trump said, we'll make it easy for you. We'll get rid of all the red tape. We'll get rid of all of the things that stand in the way of businesses succeeding. A lot of that probably comes from the whole Green New Deal, the Inflation Reduction Act, which was the biggest climate change bill ever, to go through Congress. So I think that that's a big part of it, is that Trump is saying, listen, if you're going to invest in Americans and you're going to invest in this country, we're going to make it easy for you to do that because that's what's best for the American people. And that's not what Joe Biden thought, right? Joe Biden's idea was that the only good investment was in green technologies. That was his whole thing. Even his CHIPS Act only, it didn't do very much. It had a little bit going on in Arizona. Some of the materials had to go back to Taiwan before they could come back to the US. So there was this whole sort of interconnected thing going on there. And that's not what Trump's about. And that's not what these tariffs are about. And I thought it was interesting this week when the stock market really tanked, and then it had some recovery, and then it had some more dips. I think we're going to see a bit of a roller coaster, but my hope is that it's going to be better in the long run for all of us, not just for the people who are raking in all that money from investments, but people who need the jobs. And, we were talking about Democrats before, and now you have Democrats essentially going out there advocating for trickle-down economics, saying, well, if the companies don't have a lot of money and they're losing money in their stocks, how are they going to hire people? Well, that's the whole trickle-down theory that they used to hate. And now they're in favor of it. It's very confusing what it is that they stand for. And, it's a shame that they can't get that together. But I think it'll be interesting. And I'm really hoping that all of these small towns, that they can be revitalized, and maybe people won't have to leave their homes in order to seek their fortune somewhere else in the country. Wouldn't that be cool if like families could stay where they are and they could do well, and you could send your kid and walk down the street to grandma's house and everybody's got like a new car in the driveway, or at least, one that's not 20 years old. I mean, that'd be cool.
Just newer. Yeah. No, I over on like Fox News and Newsmax and others, I've been seeing interviews with like the owner of a steel plant, and they're like, oh my gosh, like this gives us the ability to hire. This gives us the ability to raise wages. Mining, coal miners, dairy farmers. I can't even think of all of them. I've just been watching these people, the United Auto Workers, right? Like they got abandoned by Democrats, and they're like, oh my gosh, the American automobile industry is about to boom. We're worried we won't be able to hire enough good talent. So it's exciting. It's like I cover the news every day, and I'm like, oh my gosh, there's too much to share. There's
There's
much
so
good
much.
news. Yeah.
Yeah, the other thing too that you saw, and we were talking about the hands-off protest over the weekend, and I think they have another one coming up. I think they're just going to keep doing it. But the labor leaders, I took a look at a lot of these speeches, and the labor leaders who came out to speak, and if you remember Martin Luther King Jr., he was, the March on Washington was not just for civil rights, but it was for jobs, right? People were out there for jobs. And you had these labor leaders, and there wasn't anybody out there from the Teamsters. No one was out there from the UAW. They were out there from government unions. These were heads of government unions. The National Education Association is the largest union in the country, and it represents, teachers and people in education. Those are government jobs for the most part. You had people out there talking about the federal workers that they represent. Government jobs, if you're a government worker, right? And it's one thing if you're in sanitation, for example. I mean, that's a tough job. But if you're like an office worker in DC, what are you doing belonging to a labor union? When you have people go in and do collective bargaining for you, which Trump said, we're done with that. But when you have people collective bargaining for office workers, and they are collectively bargaining with the government, whose dime is that? That's our dime. That's saying, hey, taxpayers, we government workers want more money. So even though we're not competing in a marketplace, even though our work only has, value to you, perhaps, and we don't want to be transparent, we don't want to show you the work we're doing, we don't want anyone to come in and fire anybody, we don't want any revelations, we don't want any understanding of where this money is going, but we want more of your money so we can keep doing this thing. And you look at the benefits the government workers get. Great benefits, vacations, great healthcare stuff, good investment stuff. And sure, like, let's all get that. That sounds great. But they have a lot better deal than most of the rest of us see in the private sector. And in the private sector, you have small businesses. They're trying to make these $15 minimum wage demands that you have out there in a lot of states. Government labor should not be representative. They should not be representing government unions. That's not what labor was about. You mentioned the coal miners. A big part of what labor was about, what originally, when labor unions came into existence in the United States, was representing dock workers, representing coal miners. There were coal companies where you'd go work for the coal company, you'd go down in the mine, you'd get paid in company script, right? They would pay you with like money that was only usable at the company store. That's where we get that term. You would pay your company rent because you would be living in company housing. That's the kind of abuse of workers that labor unions came into existence to prevent. And during the riots and during all of that stuff, when union organizing was going on, people were getting killed. People were getting thrown in rivers, thrown off docks. That was serious work. It was important for American workers to get some dignity and to get some respect and to get some freedom for their wages, the 40-hour work week, all of this kind of stuff. Labor was responsible for that. The workers rose up and they were responsible for taking their rights as workers. God bless them. You even had Cesar Chavez in California, who was organizing produce workers, people, migrant farmers picking strawberries. And you know what he was really against? He was really against illegal immigration, because illegal immigrants would come in and they would undercut the wages of all the people he had organized to get fair wages so that they could be strawberry workers and their kids could go to a decent school and then they're, grow up to be something other than a strawberry picker. So we see a great labor history in this country that I think we can all be proud of. And to have labor leaders out there representing a bunch of office workers in DC, like, that's just insulting.
Yeah.
That's not labor.
Yeah, you make a really great point. That didn't even cross my mind. The videos I saw were like, what are you out here for? I don't know. Someone just told me to show up, right? Like, half the people didn't even know what they were protesting. Some of them are paid to be out there. Okay. In our final time together, I've got two things. I know you're a brilliant mind, so I want you to help me understand these Democrat thoughts. The House Republicans have just voted and passed the SAVE Act, Safeguard American Voting Eligibility Act, to make sure that illegal immigrants aren't voting in American elections. Every single Democrat voted against this. So they're basically broadcasting to the world that, yes, we do want illegal immigrants that don't have an American history, don't have a tie, haven't paid taxes, haven't paid into a system their whole career. We want them to determine, based on their thinking from a different country, what America should be like. Your thoughts on every Democrat voting against that?
Yeah, I think that's crazy. I used to be really in favor of there not being voter ID. I thought that that was a good idea. I lived in New York. My great grandparents came from Italy. They became citizens and they voted. And some of my great grandparents could not read or write. They were Italian. They couldn't read or write Italian. They couldn't read or write English. And they were able to vote by signing their name with an X. I respect that. And I think that that's a great country that embraces people so fully. But they were legal immigrants. They came in, they got their citizenship, and New York City has that rule. I left the city and I had been like, oh, voter ID shouldn't be a big deal. We shouldn't worry about it. I had to get a voter ID where I moved. I moved to West Virginia. Voter ID is required. It was 5 minutes. It was 5 minutes. It was like the easiest thing in the world to get a voter ID. I just had to show up with my existing ID, which everybody basically needs. You need an ID for like everything. And you don't have to get a driver's license. There's non-driver IDs. I think they're like $9 in most places. It's really not that hard. And I thought, oh, this is really not that bad. It's as easy. You could just get a voter ID. And when you start to think about the amount of illegal immigration that has been pushed into the US. And then you start thinking about, this is what really changed my mind. You start thinking about the motor voter thing where you sign up to get your driver's license and you're automatically registered to vote. And then all of these states that allow illegal immigrants to get driver's licenses, and then they just automatically register to them to vote. That's a real problem. These two things shouldn't be linked. You shouldn't end up illegally voting or illegally being registered to vote just because you get a driver's license. And I'm not so sure that you should be able to get a driver's license if you're an illegal immigrant anyway. That doesn't seem like a great thing. But yeah, I think you're exactly right. Democrats want to have all of these people vote. And you see that in a lot of cities. In New York City, there was a big push to have people who are non-citizens be able to vote in local elections. That should not be what we're doing. And it makes it very confusing when you have voter rolls that are like, this voter roll is for just local elections, this one is for federal. Because when you go to vote, it's all of the things at once. Everything's on one giant ballot. It's not like there's no real differentiation there. Yeah, I think you're right. I think Democrats would like to have everybody who they have imported voting for them. And the way that they're going to do that is bribing everybody with free housing and free whatever else, vague legal status. And why do they want this second class? Why do they want there to be people who don't have legal standing? That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is. Well, I think they're a dying party. I think they know that. They have no leadership right now. I could point out a couple of people that I think would be good, but they ignore those people.
Right.
And now you've got like AOC and Jasmine Crockett. They're the rising stars. Meanwhile,
and they're
they
idiots. They're so foolish.
Yeah. Okay. So the guy that I actually like, that I think would be good, his name is Dean Phillips, and he's like a really, really intelligent guy, business experience. They just pretended he didn't even exist.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at least with RFK Jr., they had the respect level to kick him off the ballot, right? This other guy, they just pretended he didn't even exist, right? He's just a ghost in the room. So, but
he's like a
anyway,
New Hampshire guy, right? Isn't he?
Yeah. He's really, really intelligent. He's got a lot of really great ideas. He used to go around to people and he would say, "Okay, I brought bagels and coffee. Tell me how Democrats can be better. Tell me why you like Donald Trump." He was really trying to understand the issues. I think he was more of a center Democrat than a far left one, but maybe that's why they chose to ignore him, or maybe just because he was a white guy. I don't know.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's what they need. They need centrists.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, the Democrat Party as it stands right now, you used to be able to be a pro-life Democrat. You can't be a pro-life Democrat now. That's just not a thing. Like, I remember that being a thing because I grew up Catholic and there were Catholics and they were pro-life and they were Democrats. They were Democrats because of labor, not because of abortion and all these crazy social issues. And now you can't be that. And the Democrats are so requiring of everyone to be in lockstep. And now all these Democrats are in lockstep and they don't even know what they're marching for. It's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. More crazy from the Democrat Party. So, somebody that I just love having on my show, Congressman Tim Burchett from Tennessee, he put out a video yesterday that in a closed door meeting, he said every Democrat in the room voted against stopping the delivery of $40 million of cash every week to the Taliban. He said, I can't explain it. Why would we give money to the Taliban? 40 million of taxpayer money every week. That money then disseminates out into terrorist groups, groups that hate America, groups that hate women, groups that hate children, groups that hate LGBTQ. Like, he's like, I can't wrap my head around it. Every Democrat voted against blocking 40 million a week in cash to the Taliban. Can you, Libby, Emmons, help me understand that?
I have been trying to understand this myself after the U.S. pulled out of Afghanistan in, what was it, 2021? Was it 21,
Yes,
22? And 13 of our service members died in that operation. And when I learned that we were still giving money to the Taliban after that, we were still dumping money into Afghanistan. Joe Biden was doing that. I was absolutely stunned as you watch the Taliban crack down on women. There was recently a Taliban official who got married and his bride was not allowed to attend the wedding because she's a woman. So that's so ridiculous. Women are not allowed to be seen through the windows of their own homes. Their voices are not allowed to be heard in public. They need to be fully covered. They're not allowed to be educated. I mean, it's really an atrocious situation. And Democrats, of course, say that they are feminists. They say that they're pro-women, but they are more pro the minority culture that they uphold than they are actually in support of women, which is terrifying. We've recently seen reports that young boys are groomed for rape by the Taliban as well, that this is what's going on. We saw some recent reports, the U.S. Institutes for Peace, which I think is under DOJ scrutiny and has been for a few weeks. There's been some lawsuits back and forth. They were actually putting out articles saying that it was bad for America to crack down. No, it was bad for the Taliban to crack down on opium production, because that was bad for Afghanis who weren't in Afghanistan. I tried to understand that argument as well. It's entirely perplexing. There's absolutely no reason we should be giving money to the Taliban, unless the only reason I can think of is that we don't want them getting their money from someone else and giving their allegiance to someone else. But they're not giving their allegiance to us. They killed our guys and they hate us anyway. They're suppressing and oppressing women. They're doing brutal things to their citizens. And they're doing it with, they're doing it with our money. Comes out of our paychecks, and they're doing it with that. I don't see how these Democrats can sleep at night knowing that they are in favor of the treatment that the Taliban is giving to Afghanistan citizens.
Yeah, I agree. There was also some different programs with USAID where it was like tens of millions of dollars to women, but women aren't allowed to get educated. And it's just like it's just money laundering is what it is. But yeah, every Democrat voted against the stoppage of taxpayer money, 40 million cash flown to them every week. I don't get it.
That's just out of control.
Yeah.
Those planes should be stopped. They should not be allowed to leave whatever airport it is they're leaving. They should not be allowed to leave.
Libby, imagine this. Oh my gosh, you just made me think of this. Okay, so two airplanes, like this is an old high school math thing, right? Two airplanes take off at the same time. One of them has MS-13 gang members that have raped and killed women, and the other one has pallets of cash to the Taliban. Which one does a Democrat judge turn around? The one with murderers and rapists. You have to bring them back. But don't you dare stop that money from getting to terrorists over in Afghanistan. Like, okay, I'm not very good at math. I guess I can't figure out this story problem.
Yeah, that's absolutely wacky. It's so wacky. And I think that's what the Democrats are, why they keep screaming about Social Security, right? It's because they can't actually publicly really take issue with what's going on. You know, they want us to stop paying the terrorists. Can you believe it? Okay. They want us to stop deporting rapists and child molesters. Oh, okay. You know, like it's out of control. It's just because they're propping up the status quo that they created for this whole time, and they don't want to get rid of that. And I think there probably is some kickbacks going on, you know, whether it's like money comes back to money for Afghanistan goes to this not-for-profit that's run by the senator's sister-in-law or something like that. You know, who knows how many connections there are.
Yeah. Well, again, Tim Burchett said there is a paper trail, and we're going to see familiar names on it when they finally release it.
Wow.
Libby, I know you're busy running a newspaper as the editor and the head of that. Thank you very much for coming on. If people want to follow your organization, your articles, where can I point them towards?
Well, you can follow me at Libby Emmons on Twitter. You can follow the Post Millennial at T Post Millennial, also on Twitter. You can see what we're doing at Human Events, which is Human Events on Twitter. And also those websites, postmillennial.com, humanevents.com. And I'm actually doing a newsletter. I think I'm coming up almost on a year anniversary of doing this daily newsletter. And I'd love it if your audience wanted to subscribe to that. You can do that at thepostmillennial.com/Libby.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
I will put those links down below. Thank you so much for all you do and taking time out of your day to come on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.
You too. Thanks so much, Stephen.